The stranger grabbed my hand so hard that my fingers went numb, and before I could pull away, she leaned close and whispered, "Just play along. He's watching." I looked across the crowded courthouse lobby and saw a man standing perfectly still beside the marble columns, staring directly at us. I had never seen him before, yet the fear in the stranger's eyes told me that somehow, I had just been pulled into something that could destroy both of our lives. And what happened over the next few hours would force me to choose between protecting a stranger and protecting myself. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can find someone even in their darkest moment, that forgiveness can heal wounds that anger cannot, and that everyone deserves hope and a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our family can keep sharing stories that remind us there is still goodness in the world. My name is Everett Calloway, and at 42, I had become the kind of man who avoided other people's problems. Not because I was cruel, but because life had taught me that getting involved could leave scars you carried for years. I worked as a claims investigator for a regional insurance company, spent most of my days examining documents and photographs, and had developed a quiet routine that required very little emotional investment. 3 years earlier, my younger brother, Wesley, had died after a long struggle with addiction, and I had spent too many years believing I could save him if I simply tried harder. When he died, I stopped believing in my ability to rescue anyone. I told myself that sometimes people simply had to face their own battles. That morning, I had gone to the county courthouse to deliver documents related to an insurance dispute. The lobby was bright with afternoon sunlight pouring through enormous windows, and people moved around me carrying folders, coffee cups, and worried expressions. I remember thinking how strange it was that so many lives could be falling apart in one building while the world outside continued peacefully. Then a woman I had never seen before rushed toward me. She was perhaps 35, with chestnut hair pulled loosely behind her head and a pale blue coat that looked as though she had put it on without noticing whether it was properly fastened. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes were filled with the kind of fear I had seen only once before, in my brother's face when he realized he had nowhere left to hide. Before I could ask if she needed help, she grabbed my hand. Her palm was trembling. She whispered that I should pretend to know her because someone was watching. I almost laughed from disbelief, but then I looked over her shoulder. A broad-shouldered man in a charcoal jacket stood near the courthouse entrance. He wasn't talking to anyone. He wasn't using his phone. He was simply watching. Watching her. And watching me. The woman tightened her grip and quietly begged me to smile. I did. The strange thing was that the man immediately turned his face away. She pulled me toward a row of benches near the windows and sat beside me as though we had arrived together. She kept my hand in hers, and for several seconds neither of us spoke. Then she quietly told me her name was Celeste Marlowe. She said the man watching her was named Grant Voss. He had once been her fiancé. That alone didn't explain the terror in her voice. Then she told me that Grant had spent the past 6 months convincing everyone around her that she was unstable. He had shown her family messages supposedly written by her, claimed she had become paranoid, and even persuaded a doctor to believe she was suffering from severe anxiety. The more frightened Celeste became, the more evidence Grant seemed to have that she was frightened. It was a perfect trap. And she had come to the courthouse that day because she believed she finally had proof. She reached into her coat pocket and touched something hidden there. A small flash drive. She told me it contained recordings proving that Grant had manipulated documents and threatened her after she tried to leave him. But she couldn't get it to an attorney because someone had been following her since she left her apartment. I asked why she had chosen me. She looked at my courthouse visitor badge. She had seen my name. Then she admitted the truth. She hadn't chosen me because she trusted me. She had chosen me because she had run out of options. That sentence stayed with me. I knew what it meant to have someone look at you not because they believed you could fix everything, but because they desperately needed one person to believe they were telling the truth. I asked Celeste where she was supposed to go next. She said she was meeting a legal aid attorney upstairs. Before we could move, Grant approached. He smiled warmly. That frightened me more than anger would have. He greeted Celeste like a concerned fiancé, apologized for losing track of her, and told me she had been struggling emotionally. He said he was grateful someone had stayed with her because she had a tendency to panic. Celeste's fingers tightened around mine. I realized then that she wasn't afraid of what Grant might do in public. She was afraid of what everyone would believe if he told his version first. Grant looked at me and thanked me for helping her. Then he walked away. The moment he disappeared around the corner, Celeste nearly collapsed. I helped her sit down. She admitted something that changed everything. She had once loved Grant deeply. Not because he had always been cruel, but because he had once been kind. That was what made leaving him so difficult. She told me about the man he had been when they met, the man who brought soup when she was sick, repaired her mother's porch, and remembered tiny details about her life. When her mother died, Grant had been the person who held her while she cried. Then, slowly, something changed. His kindness became control. His concern became surveillance. His love became ownership. And Celeste kept forgiving him because she remembered who he used to be. I understood that. I remembered Wesley. I had spent years forgiving him because I remembered the little brother who used to sit beside me on the porch and tell ridiculous jokes until I laughed. I had confused loving someone with being responsible for saving them. Celeste looked at me and asked if I thought she was crazy. I told her no. But I also told her something I had never told anyone before. I said that being afraid didn't make her weak, and needing help didn't make her broken. Her eyes filled with tears. Then she revealed the most devastating part. The recordings weren't only about her. They contained evidence that Grant had been manipulating insurance claims through a company he secretly controlled. People had lost homes because of fraudulent denials. Families had been told their claims were invalid when Grant had deliberately altered documents. I froze. Insurance investigations were my field. Suddenly, this wasn't just a stranger's relationship crisis. It was connected to the work I did every day. I asked Celeste why she had brought the evidence to the courthouse. She said she knew someone had to believe her. Then she looked at my badge. And I realized that perhaps she hadn't found me by accident. She had been looking for someone who understood documents, claims, and patterns. Someone who might recognize what she had discovered. For the first time in years, I felt something inside me awaken. Purpose. We went upstairs together, but before Celeste could meet the attorney, Grant appeared again. This time he wasn't alone. He had brought two men who introduced themselves as security officers. They claimed Celeste had an outstanding mental health emergency notice and needed to be escorted outside. My heart pounded. Celeste's face turned white. Then something unexpected happened. I stepped between them. I told the men they needed to show proper identification and legal documentation before taking anyone anywhere. They hesitated. One of them looked at Grant. That tiny hesitation told me everything. They weren't legitimate officers. Grant's expression changed. For the first time, the friendly mask disappeared. He told me I didn't understand what I was getting into. I told him he was right. I didn't understand everything. But I understood enough to know that frightened people shouldn't be silenced simply because someone has a convincing story. A courthouse employee noticed the confrontation and approached. The two men left. Grant followed them. Celeste finally reached the attorney. But before she entered the office, she handed me the flash drive. She said she wanted me to keep it because she trusted me more than anyone else at that moment. I refused to take it. I told her the evidence belonged with the attorney and authorities, not with me. She looked surprised. Then she smiled for the first time. She said she had spent so long around people who took control of everything that she had forgotten what it felt like when someone helped without demanding anything in return. The attorney reviewed the files. Within an hour, the situation changed completely. The recordings showed Grant threatening Celeste. They showed him instructing employees to alter claim records. They showed him discussing ways to make Celeste appear unstable if she ever reported him. But there was one recording that stunned everyone. Grant was speaking to a man inside the insurance company. He was discussing a claim belonging to a widowed schoolteacher whose house had been destroyed in a fire. The woman's claim had been denied. The recording revealed that Grant knew the denial was fraudulent. My stomach dropped. That case had crossed my desk 6 months earlier. I remembered the file. I remembered the photographs. I remembered approving the denial because the paperwork had looked legitimate. For months, I had wondered why the woman's expression in the claim photographs had stayed in my mind. Now I knew. I had been part of the system Grant had manipulated. I felt sick. Celeste noticed. She told me that guilt was not the same as responsibility for someone else's crimes. But I couldn't accept that immediately. I thought about Wesley. I thought about every time I had told myself that I was only doing my job. I thought about how easy it was to follow paperwork instead of people. So I did something I had avoided for years. I admitted that I had been wrong. I told the attorney everything. I offered to cooperate fully. I provided every file I could remember. And when the investigation expanded, I contacted the schoolteacher whose claim had been denied. Her name was Margot Reeves. She was 68. When I met her at her small rented apartment that afternoon, she opened the door with suspicion. I told her I had been involved in reviewing her claim. I told her the denial had been fraudulent. Then I apologized. Not with excuses. Not with explanations. Just an apology. Margot stared at me for a long moment. She said she had spent months believing that nobody cared that she had lost everything. Then she surprised me by placing a hand on my shoulder. She said she didn't need me to punish myself. She needed me to help make it right. Those words broke something open inside me. For years, I had believed redemption meant undoing the past. That day I finally understood that redemption meant refusing to let the past decide what you did next. The investigation eventually exposed Grant's entire operation. He was arrested based on evidence gathered through the legal process, and several people who had been afraid to speak finally came forward. Celeste moved away from the apartment she had shared with him. She began counseling. She rebuilt her life slowly. Not dramatically. Not perfectly. But honestly. Months later, I saw her again at a community center where she had started volunteering with survivors of controlling relationships. She looked different. Not because she had become someone new. Because she no longer looked afraid of being herself. She thanked me for holding her hand that day. I told her she had saved me too. She laughed softly and said she hadn't done anything. I told her she had reminded me that helping someone didn't mean carrying their entire life on your back. Sometimes it simply meant standing beside them long enough for them to find their own strength. Celeste looked at me and said that perhaps that was what second chances were really for. Not pretending the past never happened. But proving the past didn't have to be the end of the story. I thought about Wesley that afternoon. For the first time since his death, I didn't remember only the hospital room, the arguments, or the mistakes. I remembered his laugh. The ridiculous jokes. The younger brother who once believed I could fix anything. And I finally forgave him. More importantly, I forgave myself. Not for what happened to him. But for believing that I had to carry it forever. As I walked home beneath the warm afternoon sun, I realized something I wish I had understood much earlier. Sometimes the person who grabs your hand isn't asking you to save them. Sometimes they're asking you to remind them that they are not alone. And sometimes, when you reach out to another person's fear, you discover your own heart has been waiting for someone to reach into yours. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Before you go, leave a meaningful comment telling us this. Have you ever helped someone when you didn't know the whole story, and what did that experience teach you about trust, kindness, or forgiveness? Because you never know what battle the person beside you is fighting. You never know how close someone is to giving up. And you never know how much one simple act of kindness can change two lives. Celeste once grabbed my hand because she was terrified someone was watching. Years later, I understood that the most important thing wasn't who was watching us. It was what we chose to do when someone was afraid. I chose to stay. She chose to stand. And together, without either of us realizing it at the time, we proved that sometimes a second chance begins with nothing more than one stranger reaching for another person's hand.